Let me disable this. Wait. Give it a second to connect. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to Becoming ProArtists. Today we are here with Jared Rawle, and we just want to go over really quick what Becoming ProArtist is, right? So this series that we are reinitiating is going to be an opportunity for you guys and for us to get to know up and coming professional artists, people who are established in art careers, who might have some insights for us and to hear their story. So I'll just share with you really quick. If you go to Sentient Academy, under courses, you can search for this course and see the new monthly Becoming ProArtist streams that we have available. So right in here, Becoming ProArtists, this streaming session will be made available under Life as ProArtists, and any new streaming sessions will be placed here. So look out for next month. We have another one coming up as well. So for now, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the team. My name's Savannah. I do a lot of the live streaming that we have here at Sentient Academy. We also have Julie. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Julie, and I am the project manager at Sentient Academy. I mostly do things behind the scenes. I don't do a lot of live stuff like this, so this is kind of exciting for me too.
Awesome. And then we also have Emma here with us today. And Emma's running the back end today, making sure that we have a live stream accessible through YouTube. So you can always watch through YouTube. But if you are on YouTube, remember to switch over to the Sentient website if you would like to participate and ask questions. And then our guest speaker with us today is Jared Rawle.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here. I'm honored.
Thank you. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to pop them down into the chat and we will check those out. For now, we just want to get to know you, Jared, and all about you and your career. So let's start at the beginning. When was it that you first knew that you wanted to have art be your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm like most of you, if not all of you. I love to draw and paint when I was a kid, mostly draw. And yeah, just from a very young age, I've always loved art. But I feel like I wasted a lot of my youth. In high school, I didn't take art seriously. I feel like it was, high school happens and, there's other priorities, I guess. I had a really good art teacher in high school, and he's really good, but I didn't take full advantage. And then when I went to college, I think by that time, I didn't really know too many professional artists at all. I didn't really know if that, I didn't really think if that was going to be a thing for me to be able to do, to be a fine artist. So I ended up kind of skirting around fine art, and I went into architecture because I thought, well, maybe that's kind of like art. And it was the design classes were awesome, and I did really well in design, but then I failed like my physics classes and my math classes, and those I didn't enjoy those as much. So I ended up I don't know how. I've always been interested in animation, like watching animated movies and stuff, and I think I was at University of Utah for architecture, and I must have seen some of the stuff the animation kids were doing, and I was like, oh, they're having more fun than I am, and maybe I should do that. So then I switched to UVU. I think it was UVSC back then, but I went there just to kind of like restart, just because the University of Utah was more expensive, and I was like, well, I'll just kind of start over and try to do animation now. And from the get-go, it was way more what I wanted to do. It was way more art, less like, it doesn't matter if it's engineered properly or whatever. It doesn't have to be a sound structure. If it looks right, it is right, is kind of the general rule in animation, which is way more up my alley. So I did animation, then I switched to BYU and finished my animation degree at BYU. So while I was there, it was mostly animation classes, but then it kind of dips into illustration a little bit, which was really cool. I loved anything that was like the figure drawing classes were awesome. I had a really good figure drawing teacher. Um, and and then I had a digital painting class, so it was really cool. It was my senior year or junior year. I took a digital painting class, and I thought that was really cool. The professor was really good. He had like a very scientific mind about painting, which was really unique and cool. But just painting on the computer, I thought was really fun. It kind of reminded me of painting, when I was a kid. And then I was still busy with animation though, getting like a demo reel together so I could get a job. Where obviously everyone is always stressed about getting a job in college, and that was kind of my main goal. So I'd put all my chips into the kind of a couple aspects of animation. So I don't actually animate even now. I did in school, but I focused on like texture, shading, and modeling. So that's where you like sculpt 3D models in the computer, and then you kind of paint the surface. So whether it's like skin or a rock or something, you could make, any gray model look like a certain material, but the way the light hits it. And then my senior year, I got an internship with Pixar in California. And I ended up leaving school early, which to the professors at BYU, to their credit, they were always very good about getting us jobs and what was, doing what was important for us. And they helped me finish school online. I should, make sure to emphasize that they were interested in me still graduating, but they were cool with me doing it online, finishing up and kind of doing that. So, and then the internship was 3 months, and then it transitioned into like a year. They call it a residency, kind of like an extended contract. And then I was hired full time. So I kind of just went straight out of school into that. And I've been doing that ever since, and it's been awesome. And then I'll just keep talking unless you guys interrupt.
No, yeah, you're good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, it kind of segues into like, and then as far as when I was at Pixar, once I had a job, it was, and no homework to do, which was awesome. I kind of, and I was surrounded by artists. There's tons of awesome artists where I work, and there's a group that would get together every Friday and paint still lifes from life, like traditional painting, or you could bring an iPad and paint. But I started going to that and really enjoying that. So then I went and bought some oil paint. I remember spending like, it was like not even that much money. We all know how expensive oil paint is, but I remember back then being like, oh shoot, I was an intern and living in the Bay Area is super expensive. And, of course my wife was like, what's this $200 charge? I was like, oh, I had to get paint. It's a work thing, but I got some oil paint, and then just got hooked on like the traditional painting. I just think it's the coolest thing. I think it's probably because I spend all day on a computer, and then just to not be on a computer and make something with my hands is super satisfying, and be able to touch a painting and see the tactile impasto strokes is awesome. I think, anyone here knows what it's like. I got more and more into that, starting with that still life kind of class. And it wasn't a class, it was just, we'd get together and paint and gossip and then maybe like check out each other's work, but I could learn a lot just by watching the other people paint. And then there was also a really good artist at Pixar. He just retired recently. His name's Bill Cohn. He's a pastel artist. He's kind of one of the Pixar original artists. And he did like this course. He would do them like every year and invite people to go outside. We did an outside plein air course. And that was even more fun because I'm super inspired by nature, and I love being outside. And it was like, oh, this is actually even better than being inside painting still life. So I can be outside and do the same thing. It was harder because everything was changing, and the wind, and how it is, the light. is constantly changing, but like that was kind of like, oh, this is the best of the best. This is what I really enjoy doing. And so I just got more and more into landscape painting from there. And I've just been painting ever since, practicing. And Pixar was cool because they'll bring out artists for like workshops and stuff, kind of like Sentient, that, you know, they'll sponsor people. They're very invested in their people being artists, you know, inside and outside of work. You know, it's kind of an investment as far as like the random little things we learn that are related to our job makes us better as a whole. So I remember John Burton came once, and that was very inspiring. Uh, and he does like, he's a really good oil painter, but he also is a really good gouache painter, and he does like outdoor little gouache studies. And I remember we'd go out with him, and it was like, oh, this is awesome, like you can really crank stuff out in gouache. And so I started doing gouache for a while. And for, you know, the beginning of me starting painting, I think it was the best, just because I just only do it outside. Like I lived in a crappy apartment with bad lighting. So it was like, oh, I'll just go outside where it's always the best lighting. And that was kind of all I did, was plein air painting. And that was probably really good. And I should really just keep doing that probably. But yeah, that's kind of, it just kept snowballing into just getting more and more into painting. Like I love painting. I've been doing oil painting for a while now. Once in a while I'll do the gouache, but you know, anyone who's done the gouache, there's that like weird, it dries darker, lighter, you know, there's like a weird like curve to it. But I love it too. I'd love to try other mediums too. But yeah, sorry, that was
No, that was excellent. That's exactly what we wanted to hear. A nice, good story. So now where you're at is you kind of had like a duality in your art, right? You have the career side working with the studio, and then the gallery side. Is that mostly just oil painting, or do you have gouache in galleries as well?
I don't have any gouache in galleries. I'm only in one gallery. I'm fairly new. Yeah, first of all, I'm super, I think I know most of the people that are participating, but like I consider myself very new to the art career. So it's or the fine art journey in general. And yeah, in the one gallery I just have shown oil paintings so far, but maybe I'll sneak an acrylic in to hit a deadline. But I try to but or an acrylic oil combo, depending on how strapped for time I am. But yeah, so far mostly oil, but not because not like consciously, it just is. Lately I've been on an oil kick, but every time I see gouache paintings, I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Or if I see watercolor, that would be an even bigger jump. Watercolor would be cool. Or just drawing. Like I need to spend more time drawing. Every time I paint like a horse or a cow, I'm like, wow, I just suck at drawing. Like it's just they're all too long. Or, yeah. I don't
Do
know,
you feel like
all the things. I need to just focus on the basics, but yeah.
with the gallery that is it a contract that you have with them, or that you're working with?
I don't know. I never signed anything. It was very chill, which is totally up my alley. I'm not like if the contracts came out, I would have been like, you know. But no, they've been really cool. They reached out. It was a couple years ago, just on Instagram. And strangely enough, before they reached out, it was like right before they reached out, maybe a month or a few weeks before, another gallery in like, I want to say like Arizona or something reached out. And for whatever reason, whether I was nervous or just didn't feel, I was probably mostly, I just felt inadequate, or just like, oh, I don't have anything to show. It kind of fizzled out, that one. And I wasn't, for some reason, it didn't feel as good as a fit as I show through Meyer Gallery in Park City, and the lady in charge is Susan. She owns the gallery, and she reached out on Instagram. And maybe it's because I had a couple painting friends that were there. So, I was able to like, hey, am I going to get screwed over? But it was like, I was able to ask around and be like, hey, what's your experience with the gallery thing? Has that worked out for you? And, and I heard nothing but good things about it. So I'm glad and I jumped in, and I didn't sign anything, but it was just all like, hey, do you want to be part of our gallery? And I was like, yeah. And I think I started out on they do like a yearly show, just like a small work show. And so I did that. And then I think when I was there at some point, they were like, yeah, do you want to just be a part of the gallery? And then it was very like smooth and simple for me, which is great. So.
Awesome. Do you feel like you have the freedom to kind of paint subject or medium what you want, or is there like an expectation set for what they usually sell?
Yeah, no, I probably set the expectation by posting whatever I was painting on Instagram, really, because I'm sure if it was something they didn't want in their gallery, she wouldn't have reached out. But mostly landscape stuff. They've been good about it. Like I'm sure if I like started painting spaceships or something, it would be like, oh, what's going on, Jared? Or they've been cool. Like I think I started out just showing landscapes, then I've started chucking in like farm animals just because that's what I see around, and it's just nice to have like something living or a nice shape to add to the landscape. That's kind of where I've come from with adding like livestock to paintings. Not that I'm like have this like huge understanding of farm life or anything. It just is what's around and what's inspiring.
Yeah. Are you usually like going out and doing a plein air gouache study or just taking reference photos whenever you see something?
Yeah, I wish I could say I was purely just going out and pure artist, but no, I'll go on a lot of mini excursions, whether I even bring a camera or not. I'll just go out and enjoy like a quick drive. Like I'll drop my kids off at school in the morning, and if it's like, oh, the light's really pretty, I'll kind of drive a few more blocks, and kind of pause. And yeah, I think there's certain fields I'll frequent. Like, I'll stop by a few times every week just to see things and to see the animals. And like, it's just therapeutic for me. I'm sure I look really weird. There's always this weird, creepy van parked there with this guy standing there looking at the animals or whatever. But
Watching those cows.
yeah. And
What a creepo.
Yeah. No, and it's nice when I have my kids. I notice people are way more like I'm way more brave and willing to go places with my kids because I feel like people don't assume the worst when it's just this, when it's this, this kids versus this like creepy. I immediately become creepy when I'm this like out there. Go out at night. Like I like to go out and observe like the moon and stuff. Like I think nocturne painting is cool and I want to get more into that. But like I can go on a walk at night and like run into a jogger and, they'll maybe cross to the other side because they're still. And I totally do that. So, and then I do like to go out and paint. And I think I've painted with people who are in this chat and we'll go out and just find stuff to paint. I love painting outside. And I've gotten busy with like deadline stuff and I've realized like, oh, I need to practice outside. Like I start to feel it or miss it. Like it's just more enjoyable to me.
Yeah. You know what? I just realized while we're talking here, I should probably share some of your art with everybody in case
That's okay.
People aren't familiar here.
Everyone will leave the chat when the art comes up.
Like, oh, yeah. Okay, let's check this out.
Yeah, no, I posted just a couple of recent things I've been working on.
Do you want to tell us about some of these? Are these currently in Meyer Gallery?
I don't know. I think some of them for sure are. I can't remember where a couple of these are. Yeah, the horse one I know I think I sold it a while ago. And then a couple are in a gallery, and a couple are just chilling. But yeah, the one on the left, the little horse one, like into the section there's that trail right by Utah Lake in Provo. If you follow that trail, you'll hit all kinds of like horse fields. And I like those horses because I think they're used to people feeding them because every time I go there, they would come up nice and close and kind of hang out. And sometimes I bring them little treats, but I know you're not supposed to feed other people's animals. Or
oh, no.
I pull like they'd cleaned out their vegetation, but I pull out like weeds next to it, next to their fence and feed them and stuff. Probably not supposed to do that, I know, but it kept them there for a while. And then I take pictures of them and draw them real quick and pick a pose. And then I did a couple plein air studies in the morning of those. I really like the white horses in the morning with the lighting. And I also like the dark horses. Both of them had cool looks to them. And then the painting next to it is actually like the really close by, just looking west. Utah Lake would be somewhere in between the foreground and that mountain. And I changed it a little bit. It was more about the clouds and the sunset. But that's what that was. And then obviously aspens, the aspens everywhere around here are super inspiring to me. And then the other one was kind of like a hodgepodge of like, I didn't want to paint like a specific mountain like Timp, or I think it's like a combination of like Timp and Maple Mountain. There's like local mountains. And it was like, I just wanted like a certain feeling. And I don't know. I need to practice that more, but that's what that one was on the right.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'll save some of it for later, right?
Oh
Like I
yeah.
have some more interesting things to look at. I was just thinking about, so like you were talking about how you got well, not how, but I'm wondering how. What was the process like working with BYU to get your internship with Pixar? Is that a pretty common thing?
Yeah. I mean, it was. I don't know. This is gonna. I don't know if anyone ever listens to this trying to get like the inside scoop. I feel bad. It'd probably just make them angry. But no, I super lucked out. It was. Um. BYU has a super good relationship. Or at least they did at the time. I'm assuming they still do. But I mean, I'll speak to it or how it was when I was in school. I'm really good at staying connected with studios. So studios would come out regularly and kind of like do little presentations or whatever, and then um, sometimes they would come with like, oh, we need this position filled, like maybe there's somebody who we can get going on an internship or something. And it just happened to be at that time, like it wasn't super ideal timing as far as like going to school, because I had just barely started my senior year. um or the second, yeah. And so it was like I was already in school, and then they came, and then they were like, well, we need somebody now. Obviously they don't follow semesters. They don't care. They needed someone in February is when I went. And so I was like a month into school in that new semester, and then they needed people. But like I said, the teachers were cool about being like, well, let's just take all these classes and switch them to online. Kind of, I don't know what they had to do. I'm sure they had to fudge things or whatever, which I'm grateful they did to make it happen. But yeah, it was like, it was having that connection. I think that was like one of the big things about that program is they were very well connected to studios. And then the only thing that we had to do, not the, like it's easy. The hard thing that we had to do was make sure you were always ready. You had to have your, like I mentioned, the demo reel. You had to have your portfolio ready, because you never knew when where they're gonna come. And if I hadn't have been preparing for years, when they did come, I wouldn't, that opportunity would have gone quick. So luckily, I did have a couple things to show, and it worked out. But you know, they're pretty good about like they know, kind of how things are going to go year to year, and so they'll try to encourage their students to prepare accordingly. But I feel like if you just did the assignments that they gave in class, that made your portfolio, right? Like if you took the assignment seriously, then it just the portfolio made itself, and then I compiled it, and then it was pretty smooth. I was, I get nervous, like even this kind of stuff. Like the interview was chill, like it wasn't bad at all. It was a phone interview. I think they just were mostly at that point making sure you're not like crazy or mean. So yeah.
So, and you were originally, when you went into art from architecture, you were in UVU. So were you very familiar with the BYU program and their relationships? Is that why you chose to switch
Oh
over to
yeah.
BYU?
No, that's a good question. So and I think UVU is just blowing up. Like every time I drive by, it's like gotten 3 times bigger. It's like
Yeah.
new buildings. UVU is awesome. I loved UVU, and I was at University of Utah for architecture. Then I went to UVU to start doing animation. And the guy there, his name was Rodane. He was like the dean of the animation program. And there was another guy who was an actual animator. He worked on like Batman and stuff. He was really cool. Oh, I can't remember his name. That's too bad. But they were both really awesome. And no, Rodane even mentioned, he was like, well, if you can get into BYU, they're like he was, he was really helping his program, but he was like, at the moment, they're more established with studios that,
Mm.
he said that in one of his classes, because I remember sitting there and he was like, if you can make it into BYU for their program, that would be good too. And I was like, well, maybe I should try for that. I just married my wife. She went to BYU. And so maybe that was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try for BYU so we can go to the same school and see each other and hang out. And it just worked out. But from what I hear, the UVU program is doing really well. I'm kept up on stuff too. It's been a few years, but I need to reach out and see how it's going. But they were doing really well and like really pulling that program up. So I
Awesome.
think like,
Jared.
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to interrupt. We just have a number of great questions in the chat here. Is it okay if I pose them to you?
Of course.
So Coulter asks, how do you balance paintings with your work for Pixar?
I don't. No, I yeah. Uh yeah, that's a good question and something that I constantly struggle with and complain about. But lately I've had a change of heart because it used to be where I'd either use it as an excuse where it's like, oh, I have a full-time job. So, I'm always gonna have that, like disadvantage. But lately I'm looking at it and I've been listening to artists podcasts like that. I was listening to you guys do the Undraped podcast I saw as part of it's on Sentient. I don't know how you're affiliated, but
Yeah,
those
Jeff
are
Hine.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. And I was listening to those and he was interviewing, I think it was Kimball Geisler as an artist I look up to. And I didn't know this, but Kimball paints only at night and is, stay-at-home dad while his wife's working and then paints at night. And just hearing that, I was like, well, there goes my excuse. Like he gets amazing work done. So like I'm trying not to use that as an excuse anymore because a lot of my painting is at night when I'm most tired, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, painting does fall off the fastest. Like if I have some family stuff come up in the fall and painting just dropped off, like for, a couple months, I wasn't painting very much while I dealt with some other stuff that was like emotionally draining and like took a lot more of my time. So then I was kind of had to rejigger working and so yeah, the answer is I don't know. Like I feel like if I can get in good habits, I've tried to get in good habits mostly because deadlines force me to be like, oh, I'm really tired, but I can at least paint for an hour before I
Right.
fall asleep in front of the TV, right? Or like just being like, okay, I can't watch TV, I can't do this, but it is important that I hang out with my wife after our kids go to bed. A lot of you have families, and you know how it is. Like kids are kind of just
Yeah.
this bomb that just like they don't care what's going on in your life. They're gonna do what they're gonna do, and it's awesome. But painting does fall. Like obviously, my full time job, I need it's like I need to have money for my kids, so that kind of takes priority. But luckily, I still have time to paint if I make the time. Like if I choose not to, if I cut out of maybe some other things, like what, TV can be a hard one at night when you just want to relax. Sometimes
Right.
it's best just to paint. So
Now, you do have an upcoming show at Meyer Gallery, right?
yeah, yeah.
What has been the biggest challenge preparing for that show?
The timing was
Time.
bad for me. It was I think they told me about it. I think I learned about it in September. And you're always like, oh, it's months away. That's perfect, but then when you start dividing your time out, trying to get a body of work, you realize you don't have much time. And then I had some family stuff that hit in the fall, like I said, that kind of took my painting time away. So now I'm like in crunch mode, which it's hard to like feel like you're producing good work when you have a deadline. But it's also nice because it's like, oh, I kind of do produce more, even though it's more painful. Um, but it's um yeah, the timing has been hard for me and just like um just like the pressure, maybe a little bit of pressure of like, oh, now everything I need to do needs to count or I'll run out of time. And like, and one of the hard things is like for a bigger painting, it's so dumb of me, but and you have all been there, I know it, where you're like, well, I don't have time. I'm not full-time painting. I'm not going to do my studies. I'm not going to prepare. I'm just going to jump in and I've got a clear vision of what I'm going to paint big, and it never works out for me. So I've wasted a lot of time painting giant paintings are just sitting here in horrible states. I'll paint over them. But, I think just
Um,
painting is the only answer would be I keep painting. Otherwise, hopefully it works out. I'm not going to have as many pieces, and they'll never be as good as I want them to be. But like maybe that's the lesson for me is like just doing it anyways, and like maybe this won't be this won't be like my magnum opus of my life, but like it'll be a good stepping stone towards a better show in the future, hopefully.
for sure. We have one question from Cheryl, and she says, in what ways has your Pixar digital work helped your oils? It seems that observing digital movies and the use of color and value could be a helpful thing and fun at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good question, Cheryl. um yeah, I feel like it's like being involved in the movie making process. Like I'm surrounded by people who are really good with like obviously color in a movie is important in all movies. There's the color script, and color can evoke different emotions. I know that like David Dibble's popular, especially, well, he's popular everywhere, but in Utah everyone knows David Dibble, and he came from the animation background, and he actually did the lighting keys and stuff. I don't actually do that. I'm not as proficient. I wish I could do that. That's kind of what I learned in painting. But yeah, just being involved in that though, and seeing like, oh, this scene is going to be tinted green or whatever. This is like it helps me to remember like, oh, color is an important part of the storytelling, and the value, like you said, color and value, you change that up and it evokes some strong emotions in movies. And um yeah, I think it's just a constant exposure to it. It kind of becomes more like, oh yeah, that's something that you always think about. Or you should, I say these things like I should be doing these things, but I do feel like it does help me just being exposed to other people who are doing it really well and working from their work to make my work. I can see the value in it. So yeah.
So where do you have more of a passion for the digital realm or for the traditional realm then?
I'm more passionate about traditional, and maybe that's because I do the digital all day, and the traditional is like my passion project. Maybe if I was painting full time, I would start to miss like, working on a movie with a group of people. I don't know. But I think that no, I like painting more. Like going outside and not being in front of a computer. That's the downside to my job is I don't like computers. This is kind of funny.
Uh,
I don't like I don't like sitting in front of a screen. And it just is weird to me. Like if you think about like, wow, if that screen was off and you just like it's like you're just sitting there, It's kind of weird to me. Like I'd rather be outside painting, but I do like working with my hands and making something physical. But that not to say that I don't love, animation and computer graphics. It's like a fun medium. It's awesome, but I do love traditional painting the most. Yeah.
so do you have like a set goal in mind or aspirations to gear your career more in that direction, or are you pretty happy with the balance you have right now?
Um, right now I'm happy with the balance because I think having gotten more exposure to artists that I respect and kind of diving into their life, it's not like I wonder if I was a full-time artist, how, it's and I've talked with Coulter, he's here, and it's like he does art full time, but it's not this. I have this romanticized version of like, oh yeah, you just be painting outside all day and it'd just be all hunky dory. But like you've essentially got like 5 jobs. It's like you gotta frame your work, you gotta prepare all your stuff, you gotta market, you gotta do the business side of things. And the one advantage I do have to having a different job is like I get to make art without the pressure. I don't feel pressure to make money. Like it's nice when I do, because it can be, maybe validating to be like, oh, maybe one day. But right now, it's nice for me to have a job that like is secure and insurance. And I've got 4 kids and they're young. And I feel like if I was constantly stressed out about trying to make good art and sell it, it might just, for me, this is for me, like I need to go slower. Like I'm just slower on that track. It would be cool if I could make it work and maybe in the future, but I think it'll be more of a long run thing for me. And I'm okay with that as long as I have time to paint, where I make the time. Everyone's got the time, but as long as I make the time to paint, I realize I can improve. And as long as I'm improving, I feel like I'll be able to one day, I don't know, maybe do it more, maybe not, but if my current balance was the same as it is and always for the rest of my life or the rest of my career, I'd be okay with that. I can't complain. At least my day job is very art related, so it's nice. Yeah.
That's
And
nice.
that's recent thinking. For a while, I was like, well, what can I do to become a full-time artist? And it's been recently,
Mhm.
I'm like, well, what is the point of that? Like, why do you want to be a full-time artist? So I can paint more. And that's where I'm like, I'm still juggling that out in my head, where it's like, will that really help you become a better artist? Or will you just be spending your time doing these other stressful things that you suck at anyways? I'm a horrible business person. I'm a horrible marketer. So
Mhm. At least you have that insight. You know where you stand and you can figure the rest out.
yeah, sorry. Hopefully this information is like, no, you're saying the wrong things. I'm sorry.
No, it's excellent. It's excellent because we're also interested, like in Sentient. Um, it's not all about traditional art all the time. We're trying to break more into other forms of art careers, like working with Tiffany Main. She's going live with a mentorship as well. She's worked with Marvel and things like that. And this is a reality for a lot of artists now, is being able to have something that can easily support them and support their families, and that they can grow and practice and learn as artists, and have that experience, like you're saying, working with other people on the movie or in the studio, that social experience as well. So I think it resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny. Tiffany, I've talked to her on Instagram,
Oh, yeah.
and we have this exact conversation where it's like, well, I dare you to go. And I'm always a person who's like, you should totally do it. You could totally do it. And then when someone tells me, I'm like, no, not me. It's
That's funny.
I want to see someone else do it. And then when they do it successfully, I'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. But
Kind of follow you. It's a safe path. Nice to hear it. We reached out to our Instagram, and we had a couple people um, interested in some questions out there. I don't know. Have you had any experience doing local art fairs at all?
um I did you mean like the booth things, right?
Yeah,
Uh
I think so.
so I did one last year and it was a really interesting experience. I think coming from my limited background as doing gallery stuff and then going to the booth thing, it was like this, it was like it was kind of weird. It was a weird thing for me, if I'm being honest. I did
Mhm.
it was a booth show. It was last year. It was called Art in the Park. It was Rob Chipman. He's a really cool artist. He does the oh, what's it called? It's this fascinating, not I'm not gonna say it. Anyways, Rob Chipman. What he does is amazing. Look him up. I forget the word because I'm in front of you people. But he put this together with a group of people and it was really cool. It was in Salt Lake. It was 3 days. And it was it was that like booth experience that I think most of the artists there had already done it and kind of knew what was up. I did it with an artist named Carson Thompson, and neither of us had done it. And we just kind of showed up with our stuff, and you hang it up on the racks, and then people come in, and you're talking for 3 days straight. It was intense, and it was awesome. I got to meet a bunch of the artists who I knew through Instagram. But it was like, I don't know if it was for me, to be honest. Like I don't know. Just because it was like I felt the pressure to do a lot of paintings, to have like stuff to fill the booth. And maybe it like, I don't know, maybe my personality, I don't know. I'm so slow. And I always use my full-time job as an excuse, but no, I'm just in general slow. And I would rather, I think I'd rather just make like, I'd be more proud if I had like 5 good paintings than 60 mediocre paintings. I'm that type of person where it's like, no, I'd rather just cut way down. And so I don't know. I've thought about that, and maybe I'll do some more booth shows in the future. But like for right now, I kind of want to slow down and learn more. Like I feel like it put me into a performance mode where I felt like I was sacrificing improving as an artist, and just like, oh, if I make a bunch of these, they'll sell. And then I didn't do super well. I didn't, I just didn't do very well as far as like the effort that I put in, and time. It just didn't equate. It didn't make sense for what I was getting out of it.
Do you feel
But it was
like
still a good
the
experience.
networking or the visibility is very significant in going to those local markets?
Yeah, no, it was good. And that's where it's hard, because I can't say it was like, oh, that's as far as there were so many benefits as well, right? Like, because I got to meet really cool artists and see artists that was probably my number one, where it's like, oh, I got to meet all these really cool artists in one place. We could commiserate and talk, just, it was like, oh, my people. It was fun to just, that was cool. So there were definite benefits, and the networking, yes, there was opportunities. I know there was a lot of opportunities for like commission work. And so like, and they've reached out with maybe some commission opportunities and future opportunities, and I know that does snowball, like if I kept doing that route. But it's part of my journey, I guess, is like deciding like, do I want to go that route and be, there was a lot of booth people there that were like, okay, I'm going to pack up and next week we're doing this booth show, and we just came from this booth show, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I had to do this more than like twice a year, I'd be going crazy. Like, it was like high energy, or just I felt like more of a hustle than like dropping some paintings off at a gallery and then, a year later getting a paycheck. And part of that's like, I've got a steady job, so it's like that's not on the table. The money isn't like it's not as much pressure for me. But I don't know.
So then for somebody, because I know this is Valentine who is inquiring about this on our Instagram. And he's here with us today. He's watching. Hello. And he's breaking into the art realm and interested in becoming a professional artist. As somebody who's just breaking into the art realm, do you think it's beneficial or even necessary to do local markets, or would you recommend more focusing, like you were saying, on improving your art and having a good portfolio and something to send to galleries?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you, Valentine, for joining us. I think I think ideally you would be able to do all of that. Like all of that should work seamlessly together in a perfect world. And I think you should make that work. And I think you should definitely do local things. Um, yeah, I would say so. If like for me, if for nothing else, like if you didn't come away making a bunch of money, but you came away making good, like I've made some good friends, totally worth it. And I think you should totally do that. And like you're gonna find people who might, ask for commissions later on, and then you're gonna make a bunch of artist friends. Like I think that's totally worth it. And a good investment. And it's just good to have, it's good to know who the people in your area are, so that you can kind of work together and, help each other to improve. Yeah, sorry, I might have gone too. I wasn't trying to go negative with the local art stuff. I think it's awesome. It's part of me trying to think like, okay, like what are the drawbacks and benefits to doing a
Yeah.
certain thing. But that's good. And then number one is improving your work. Like for me, it's like it doesn't make any sense to like like you could promote the heck out of yourself and whatever, you know, you could be really good at marketing, but if you don't have a good product, you might get a bunch of people in the beginning, but I can't imagine people would hang around if you're not producing inspiring work. Like that's just in my dumb head. It makes more sense to make good work and have that be number one priority, and everything else, it'll be a lot easier for everything else to kind of to fall into place. And like, or even reaching out to galleries, like, you know, you could reach out to a million galleries, but if you weren't quite prepared with a good body of work, and I say that because I didn't feel like I had a good body of work when I joined a gallery. I don't think anyone's going to feel ready. You should, I don't want to discourage people from all these things, but always be focusing on improving, and doing your best work is most important. And just do all of the things, but make sure that you're
Yeah,
doing
everything.
it right. Is
Well,
most important.
so is there anything else you would recommend for trying to connect with like your local art community outside of doing markets or trying to meet gallery owners?
Yeah. For me, like it's not even, there's a really cool scene in Utah. There's a cool scene in California. You know, a few people I knew in California. It just, wherever you are, there's artists. But the other cool thing is like it's so easy now with Sentient Academy. It's so easy with Instagram for me is like I've got like 12 followers, but like I follow a bunch of people, and like I've been able to connect with people, and opportunities have come just by posting work once in a while and staying connected through that. Like it's kind of cool that you can have a virtual support group. Like I said, a lot of the people that I met, it was like people that I knew on Instagram. I finally met them in person at the local show that I did last year. And so yeah, I think that online resources, you can meet people, you know, online like this, you know, we're able to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation, you know, we can communicate, and you know, you don't have to be stuck, you know, if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere, you don't have to feel like you're alienated per se, because you can get online from anywhere, hopefully, and connect that way. So I would recommend doing workshops. That's always been really good for me personally, because I didn't go to art school per se, but like a workshop is like, you know, art school on steroids for 3 days. You're meeting artists in similar situations, and it's like a good way to meet the artist without being like presumptuous. Like you're there to learn, and you can kind of naturally meet that artist that you look up to. I like those. That's kind of a good approach for me.
So, and you mentioned you've done a couple of the Sentient workshops, and you're going to be doing some more workshops this year as well, attending
Yeah.
as an artist. So how much does self-study, postgraduate, so to speak, play into your improving your art, and how often do you feel like you're working at trying to learn new things and improve things in that way?
Yeah. I think it's like that's like I feel like that's all I'm doing is just constantly like it's every workshop I've been to, they kind of teach the same things. It's not like there's some magic thing that, you know, certain teachers will teach or whatever. It's all the same value, composition, that kind of stuff. And they might explain it. Some will explain things that resonate better with you. But a lot of it's just like, oh, I understand what I need to do, but then when you go to paint and it all like falls apart, that's for me. I'm just like, how is it so hard to implement these simple things? But yeah, it's like, to me, I feel like I can take a 3-day workshop, and then especially if it's recorded, which is nice. Sentient, you record them, which is awesome, because I'll go back and watch it. You know, the one I took one last year, I probably watched it like 4 or 5 times, just as I'm working, just have it playing, and then I can relearn. Or it's like, oh yeah, they talked about this, and it just is. I'm very slow, so it's helpful for me just to actually practice it a bunch as I'm working. So yeah, I'm always doing that, and I don't feel like I feel like for me, I also don't like people to tell me what to do. I don't like school assignments. I don't like rigid things. I like to kind of explore on my own, for better or for worse. So just having a little bit of instruction can go a long way for me, just because it's something I'm super interested in and want to learn. And then I just practice the heck out of whatever they teach, and hopefully it like slowly helps me progress, you know.
Awesome. I think we had a couple more questions here from Coulter. Just had some excellent questions, right? I don't know if Julie, do you want to field those questions? And I think they pertain to some of these traditional ones, and I'll share some of these images while we go through those.
Yeah,
well.
certainly. Yeah, Coulter, you were awesome. You just have so many great questions. And we didn't even get to go through them all yet. Jared, Coulter wants to know, what do you do when you get stuck on a painting? What's your process?
Well, first I start swearing and throwing. Man, I get stuck probably on every painting. And I don't know, if I could figure that out, I would be a lot happier as an artist. But I think when I get stuck, it's usually when I didn't prepare early on. I didn't do like a little, stupid things that I should be doing, like little studies, whether I do like a digital comp and then do a little, ideally, if I do like a digital thing, put it together the way, I kind of want, and then paint it in real life because it always translates just differently. And then work bigger, whatever, if I'm doing a larger painting. That kind of preparation can help take a lot of that, like I can realize early on the problems, but most of the time I don't do that. Still, it's so stupid, and I should. But I think I think I was talking with Keith about this, where when you're painting large, especially the more time you put into a painting, it becomes where you're like, well, I have to keep dumping more time into this because I've already dumped so much time into this that I'm going to make it work. And it becomes harder to just set it down and be like, that's not working. Like to call it quits and move on is so much harder the more time you put into it. So I think if you can do that, do that little bit of planning in the beginning. And a lot of it is just like, oh, this is hitting some problems. But then there is an ugly phase to paintings, right? Where it's like, and I've noticed I'll get in trouble, especially on big paintings. For me, I have to cover the canvas completely before I can judge whether it's working or not. And it's really hard. Like on, the painting on the right, I remember like, oh, I painted the clouds first, and, you sit and like, as soon as I put the foreground stuff in, I had to change like the colors of the mount. Like everything needs to change according to what's next to it. And so covering the canvas and then evaluating, I think, would be what I would say. At least that's what I need to learn for myself, or what I've been learning for myself, is if I cover the canvas and it's still not working and I work on it, put it away for a while. And then when I do come back to it, I'll be more confident. Like, I don't care. It's like you get to the point where like, okay, I don't even care if I ruin this painting anymore because I already deemed it as a failure. And then somehow that like unlocks being able to finish the painting. It's so stupid for me, but that's the way it is. Does that make sense? Sorry, I was rambling.
No, that's, and I will say, like, I love your edges around those clouds. I love how you've done that. So it's funny that you're saying that this painting was a process, that this was a challenging process to complete it. And also Coulter wants to know, how do you decide which edges to keep and which ones get chopped and smeared?
Oh yeah, another good question. There's all these things. I'm like, man, that's what I would be asking somebody else. I don't know. So yeah, the edge thing. It's funny. I used to put like edges after I'd paint stuff. And I always called it the Glendine edge. You guys know Glendine's work. Because especially early on, I didn't look at like masters works. I just look at like contemporary artists on Instagram. Glendine always has that cool edge. It's like it's like the juxtaposition between making a graphic shape and then having it read 3D. That's always been kind of cool to me. And most of the time I do it wrong or whatever. And sometimes I just don't do it for a while. That edge just kind of stayed. And maybe it was because it was like, there was like the Maynard Dixon show I went to recently, and I was like, whoa, he does the cool edge thing. And that's really where it comes from, was right. Glendine's probably looking at Maynard Dixon and Edgar Payne. And I think ideally you just like, it's your underpainting that you leave, and that one actually worked out. The clouds, that is the underdrawing coming through. And maybe sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe that's dark and stupid, but then part of me likes it. And it's just one painting, I'll probably look back and be embarrassed, and hopefully I am, maybe that I'll get better and just be like, oh, look at my feeble attempt to make that edge. But I do know artists that I super respect, and they'll add that edge in after, and I've done that too. Clouds are weird. Clouds, it's like edge work on clouds, trying to figure that out. I've never been good at that, so that's something I'm trying to learn. But I do feel like when you add a couple hard edges, it helps describe the form of a cloud. And I don't know, there's something appealing about like a random edge like around stuff. Whether you add it in after or before, I don't know if you have to be like a purist either way. I don't know.
Right. Now, are you an art collector? Is that true, or?
I wish I was rich enough to be an art collector. No, I do buy paintings, and much to my wife's chagrin, I will buy paintings when I can afford them, but they're all small. Like I wish I could buy so much more paintings. But I can't.
Absolutely.
I think most of us are like that. It's kind of the unfair reality that I think artists would appreciate paintings more than anyone, but we're like the last group to be able to afford art.
Coulter wants to know if this is when you collect art, if it is for education or if it is just for fun.
Both. Like I love being able to have a painting and seeing a painting in real life and studying it. Like I'll study the paintings I have all the time. My wife laughs because I'll just like stand there with this dumb look on my face, staring at a painting on our wall. All the time she'll catch me just staring at paintings and being like, oh yeah, they handled that really cool. And I can get up close to it and study it forever because it's mine. Yeah, definitely both. Usually the art I buy, like I'll spend money on is like, oh, I was super inspired by that. And then I buy it, and then naturally I learn from looking at the way they make the marks. And hopefully that's like a good investment.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, really quickly before we let you go, Jared, I do want to touch on your upcoming show. Are these some of the paintings that you have in that show?
Yeah. So I'm trying to do like I'm trying to just keep it kind of localish scenes, just like, not super grand scenes, but stuff that I'm inspired by kind of every day. Like that old barn. Like I've tried to steer away from painting barns just because everyone here in Utah does it so well. But you can't escape subjects or whatever. I know that's not practical, but that barn in particular, or whatever that is, the structure, it's just like a couple blocks away from my house, and I see it almost every day, and I've seen it through every season. And yeah, just stuff like that where it's like, oh, this is cool to me, or if it has a little bit more importance to me, I like that. The moon one is like, oh, I see that field so many times at night and in the snow, and trying to capture that feeling. Like stuff like that, just the fields around here with trees and simple things, like trying to be more simple and design things rather than trying to, I guess, rather than painting like the Grand Canyon or something where it's like, I guess I'm not super familiar with that, so trying to paint what I'm more familiar with was kind of been the focus for this show.
And now you're having an opening reception for this in March.
Yeah, it's on March 11th. I'm assuming it'll be in the evening. We still don't know, sorry, what the time would be. It's probably in the evening. Yeah, if anyone wants to come, I'd love to meet you and talk. And if you can come say hi, that'd be awesome.
And
I won't
that's
have
at the Meyer Gallery.
Yeah, and it's a two-person show. So if you guys know who Donnie Tapp is, he's an artist in Idaho. I'm going to be showing with him, which I'm super excited about. He's one of those Instagram artists I really like that I've met through Instagram, and I'll meet him in person there, and it's just it's cool to show with somebody that you like. So
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Jared.
yeah, thank you, all of you.
Yeah. If any of you guys want to follow him, it's at Jared Rawle _art. Is that correct? On Instagram.
Yeah,
and
thank
you can
you so
get
much.
in touch with him there. We appreciate everybody joining today and all the questions that you have. Join us next month for another artist.